When a mother delivers her child, the physical attachment may be separated, but the mental bond remains. Mother's intuition can sense a little white lie, predict the first heartbreak, and make a person doubt multiple highly educated doctors who say with certainty, "Your daughter is fine." She was not. On September 16, 2004, my water broke 6 weeks early because I insisted on reaching for the last sock in the basket while folding laundry. Gush. I always knew housework was fraught with danger and should only be tackled by experienced professionals. In the wee hours of September 17, 2004, I met my daughter Katie for the first time. She was early, but healthy, pink, and perfect, or so we thought. In the days following her birth, as I held her in the NICU and then at home, I gazed at her face and memorized every line. 2 noticeable things stood out. 1, she only cooked long enough to receive a single adorable dimple. And 2, she had a nickel-sized vein between her eyes. Over the next year, I watched this vein grow larger and larger, and eventually it was joined by other prominent bluish-red streaks covering her eyelids and reaching around the side of her face, sprouting across her hairline. During each well baby visit, I would ask my doctor if we should be concerned, and his answer was always the same. She has a big head and thin skin. She's fine. She was not fine. She was an otherwise healthy patient in the busy healthcare system. Meanwhile, she was slipping through the cracks. My stomach gnawed with anxiety and worsened with each passing week. Even though Katie was my second child, I felt like a first-time parent who was being overly dramatic, and doctors were patting me on the head, chiding, "Bless your heart," and not in the nice way. I mean in the mean Southern, "Bless her heart, she's none too bright," kind of way. At her 1-year checkup, she was examined and immunizations were given as usual. As my doctor was leaving the room, I nearly shrieked, "Do we still remain unconcerned about these veins? They've multiplied and get more prominent when she lies down or cries." When he turned around, it was as if he was seeing her for the first time. He measured her head, examined her closely, and ordered a non-invasive CT scan that was performed right there in his office. The suspicious CT led to an MRI, and finally we were given her diagnosis: vein of Galen malformation. Vein of Galen malformation, VOGM, occurs in only 1 in 3 million children per year. It is so rare, my doctor had never heard of it, and the radiologist who read the MRI had only seen it 1 other time in 15 years. VOGM develops in the womb and can often be detected there, though none of the sonogram technicians I dealt with had ever seen it either. VOGM babies lack capillaries to slow blood flow, so the vein of Galen, located in the brain at the base of the skull, grows larger, leading to hydrocephalus, water on the brain, and ultimately cardiac failure and death. In the early days of the diagnosis, we found very little information, and none of it was good. VOGM is difficult to treat, and most parents who get the diagnosis do so only after their child has died. We felt lucky. At least we had a chance to find treatment. Unfortunately, our little Midwest state felt like a deserted island. There seemed to be no one qualified to perform the delicate operation anywhere near us, and the expert, the miracle man, Dr. Alejandro Berenstein, was located in New York. Initially, we found one website that encouraged parent communication, but it was located in Europe, and though it allowed parents to talk to one another, it didn't give any information about qualified doctors in the United States. We felt lost, alone, and after Katie experienced a partial paralysis, frightened. We knew we had very little time. On the website, I met a man who lost his infant son to VOGM. He and his wife provided comfort and encouragement. They single-handedly assuaged my fears. My husband and I were panicked, but they were calm, selfless angels who shook us by the shoulders, spun us around, smacked us on the ass, and pointed us toward New York. When you look out the window on the 14th floor of Roosevelt Hospital in New York City, you'll see yellow taxicabs, pedestrians crossing against the light, Starbucks coffee signs, and the GE building looming against the sky. You'll see these things, but you won't think about them. The room service tray might be there, but you'll only be able to pick at the eggs, and it will be hard to swallow the iced tea over the lump in your throat. You won't think about anything except when the phone is going to ring. The phone call that always comes hours after you've kissed your daughter goodbye and left her sleeping in the arms of the anesthesiologist. The phone call that comes from the operating room, telling you how many arteries they've closed off in the brain this time, hoping you won't hear the doctor say there's been a complication. At least that's the way it always was for us, particularly on May 14th, 2008. So many airplane rides, layovers in Atlanta, doctor visits, medical clearance tests, blood draws, being completely out of our Midwest element in New York City, nurse shift changes, the beeping of the vital sign monitor and learning every chime and ding it made, countless things we endured on the journey to the cure. The worst by far was always waiting for that phone call on the 14th floor. During our 4 visits to New York, I dealt with the fear and anxiety by walking the halls of the PICU, staring out the window at all hours of the night, and envying the sharp-dressed Manhattanites going about their normal routines. My husband Doug dealt with it by, well, fixing things. Not a man to sit idle anywhere. Doug passed the time during our hospital stays by retightening bolts on beds, silencing creaky chairs, and fixing cabinet doors. I never questioned his coping mechanism, nor did I ask how he managed to smuggle tools on a plane in a post-9/11 society. Don't ask, don't tell. That was our motto. 5 years ago this month, I waited on the 14th floor, picked at my breakfast, looked out the window, and kept silently repeating our family mantra, believe, 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 it is as it was ordained to be. 5 years ago when the phone rang, the thick, familiar voice of Dr. Berenstein said, "You are done with me. Caitlin is cured." 5 years ago this month, the nightmare ended. I finally allowed myself to picture my daughter as a young girl and a grown woman, something I hadn't let my heart allow. 5 years ago, I thanked God, cried with my husband, and vowed to keep raising awareness. 5 years ago, hope became reality because Mama knows.